So now that you're in Roblox Studio and you have your background frame set up and everything like that, we can now begin to work on our settings menu. Now, before we script the settings button to open the settings menu, we have to actually make the settings menu. And to do that, I am going to insert another frame into our background frame by clicking the little plus sign and going to frame. I'm going to go to the name property, and I'm going to set this to settings frame. Now, it's important that we change this because this is what the script will reference the frame as. Going to set size to 1 for it to be full screen, and the background color 3 to 60, 60, 60 for it to be a nice gray color. And now, first things first is that we're going to want a way to get back to the main frame after we want to exit the settings frame. And it's very simple and easy to do that. To do that, we're going to click this plus sign again, click on text button, and I'm just going to go down to the size property and make it have a size of 60. And then we're going to drag this into the top right corner, as over here is all your built-in Roblox GUI. So the top right corner doesn't have much in it aside from maybe a leaderboard or something of that sort, but all of these menu UIs usually appear over that. And so now I'm going to give it a slightly darker background of 40 so that you can tell the button and the rest of the menu apart. I'm going to go back down to our text property and I'm going to just type X. Get down here at text color 3. I'm going to make this 225, which is red, and then 00, so we have a red X, and then enable text scale so the text scales nicely. And it looks kind of weird to just have it be here and so square. So I'm going to click on this little plus sign and add a UI corner. And now in this situation, I think the regular UI corner looks fine, but you can ultimately do whatever you wish to do. I'm also going to name this button X, because that's exactly what it is. And now, inside of the X button, I'm going to click plus sign again, and I'm going to insert a local script. And inside this local script, we're going to have it close the settings menu so that you get back to the main menu. And so I'm going to type local button equals script, script.parent. And this is the parent of the script in our hierarchy, which is the button right here. And now, go inside button, mouse button one click, that's on our left click, connect, function, and I'm going to say button parent, which is the frame, and then visible, which is whether or not the frame can be seen, equals false. And this will make the settings frame invisible. Is all this line of code right here does, but only when the X button is pressed. So now, if I playtest the game, then we can see that I can get my windows right, I can click on this X here, and our main menu is back. And now, the only issue is we don't have a way to open this menu. And to do that, it's very simple. We're going to go to settings frame, and then we're going to find the key property called visible down here, set it to false, that way we can see what we're doing over here, select our settings button, and in our settings button in the Explorer, we can click the plus sign and add another local script. Now the reason these are all local scripts is because it's running on the client, and only the player has to see these things. We don't want every single setting you make to change the same setting for everyone. One person might want their music really loud, and one person might want their music really quiet. And so you can't have it changed for everyone. Only that client, that player. And so in this script, we're going to type, again, local button equals script.parent, and then button.mouse button one click, that's left click, connect, function, 2 new lines, and here I'm going to type button, that's the button, parent, settings frame, or excuse me, not settings, but settings frame, which is the parent of the button, that's background, and then going back down to settings frame. And then we're going to change visible to true. And this just makes it so that you can see the settings frame. So now if I place this again, you can see I can hit settings, and it opens the settings frame. Now we don't have any settings here at the moment, but we can click the X to go back, settings to open, X to go back, and you can theoretically do that infinitely now. And so now we actually have to script our different settings. To do that, we're going to make the settings frame visible again, and we're going to add another text button. Now, you can have as many settings as you want to. For this example, I'm only going to have two settings, and that's whether or not shadows are enabled, which for games that have a lot of parts and things like that can be a performance increase or decrease corresponding to whether or not they're on or off, and then a day or night setting. So whether the player will see the games being day or nighttime. And every player will be able to do this independently because it's all done through local scripts on the client. And I'm going to call this button shadows. And this button's text is going to also be shadows because it will decide if shadows are on or off. I'm also going to give it a UI corner as well, just to make it look more visually appealing. And I'm going to change the background color to bright red, so 22500. Now this will be what it is when it's off. And so here, if I insert a local script quickly and I write local off color equals color 3 dot new, and this makes a new color 3 object so that we can set the background color of the button to. So the color when the shadows is off, I'm going to Control C to copy from here, and Control V to paste in here, and we can see that the color 3 is 22500, which is bright red. And now if I find line color, so let's just pick this one, then I have the line color, and I can Control C to copy this, and go back to our local script and write local on color equals color 3 dot new color 3 object, and paste our other color 3 into here, and we'll see that we have two color 3s now. And we'll see that, excuse me, we can't use dot new here. We need from RGB, and from RGB because dot new expects an argument between 0 and 1, and from RGB takes an argument between 0 and 225. Because it can be represented as both a decimal and number between 0 and 225, an integer specifically. And from RGB uses the integer that you see in your background color property down here, as well as your border color 3 and text color 3, and anything you see in properties down here is a color 3 from RGB. And so we want to use that when we're setting the colors and scripting. Now we have the on and off colors, and so we want local state. Now this is the actual state of the button, if it's on or off, equals true. Now we could say that local state is on, but it's simpler to just say local state equals true, true being on and false being off, as it makes an if statement quicker and easier to write for run in just a moment. So now I will write local button equals script dot parent, which is our shadows text button here, and then I'll add two new lines, input button dot mouse button one click, so left click connect function, and then we are going to here test what state is. So if state, then, and we can just put a new line and automatically put to in for us. And the way Booleans work in OUA and most programming languages for that matter is Basically, what this is saying, if we were to run it right now, it would say if true, which is always true because the value is true, obviously, then it will run whatever is in here. State is not always going to be true, it is just initialized as true, and so we won't know when at runtime what value state actually is. So if state's equal to true, or just if state, which is again initialized as true, then we are going to say that the button background color 3, which is button.background color 3, equals off color, because we're going to turn it off because it's a toggle. So if it's on and it's clicked, we turn it off. And then state, we can actually, outside of our if statement, as the very last thing, just write state is equal to not state. Because whatever state is not, true or false, it will become that. It basically just inverses the value of the boolean, which in this case is state, which is initialized as true. So this means the first time it'll be false, the second time it'll be true, the third time it'll be false, and so on and so forth, infinite until they have the setting that they would like. And then we can write else, because we don't need an else if state not state, which is to say state is false, because the only other option is that it's false, it's not true. The button dot background color 3 equals off color, which is, or excuse me, on color, because we're turning it from off to on. And this is what actually turns it from off to on. This just shows the player if it's off or on, using the two color 3s we have defined up here. And I hope this makes sense, but I'll explain it more in depth in just a moment. And so now we actually toggle it here. So the script is going to toggle the shadows, and right now we just have it toggle back and forth. And so the way we actually have it toggle shadows is we can write local lighting service equals game :get service double quote lighting. And this just gets the lighting service from our Explorer over here for this script to change a value in, which we are going to in lighting service dot global shadows, which is simply whether or not shadows are enabled on the client that is changing the value, equals state, which just simply means that after the state is changed, it sets the global shadows to match it accordingly. And so to quickly playtest this, just to show you that it does indeed work, if I were to click on shadows, the button would turn red, and if I hit play, you can see that I don't have a shadow, nor does the spawn point, nor does anything, because we turned shadows off. But if I simply ignore the shadows button and just hit play, we'll see that I have a shadow and the spawn point has a shadow. It's very simple, very straightforward, and as for a more in-depth description of what this code actually does, again, state is initialized as true. It has been set to the opposite, and then the value of whether or not global shadows, the value of global shadows, which is just whether or not everyone should see shadows, the Roblox Studio puts it, it toggles voxel-based dynamic lighting for the place, which is the game, and it just toggles whether or not shadows can be seen for the client that's changing them, and in this case, the player that clicked on the shadows button in the menu. Now, we want to move this button to the side so that we have room for our other button, which to get into that, I'm simply going to right-click, move up to duplicate, and I'm going to move this button over to right here. That way we have two buttons now. I'm also going to go to the Explorer and enable the text scale property. That way we can see our text much, much better. And this is going to be day. By default, it's going to be daytime. And so now, since we cloned our shadows button, it already has the UI corner and the local script in it. But we don't need this code anymore. Instead, we're going to write local onText equals day. So if it is day, then the button will say that it's day. and local off text equals night. So that if it's night, then the button is going to say it's night. We're going to make this happen by going to the button, which I'm also going to call time of day so that we can reference it in script better. And it will change this text property from day to night, or night to day, whenever it is clicked. That's all we're going to have it do, and then actually make that change happen. So now we'll also still need a button, so local button equals script.parent. It's the parent of the script in the Explorer over here. And now button.mouse button one click, again left click, connect a function. In this function, we will still need a state, so local state equals true. And true will represent day, and false will represent night. Remember this because this is going to be important in just a moment. So again, as before, we'll say state equals the opposite of state, or just not state, as we put in code here. And we're going to have an if statement up here to say if state, then, and this means that if it is day, as true is equal to day, then button dot text equals off text, because we're changing it from off to on. Otherwise, the only other option is that state is false, which means it is night up here, and then button dot text equals on text, because we're changing it from off to on, because this is a function to toggle it. So now that state is equal to the opposite of state down here, we again need the lighting service. So local lighting service equals game, get service, lighting. And now that we have the lighting service here, which again is the lighting service we see right here in our Explorer, and we can go to lighting service dot time of day equals, and this is a one-line if statement, basically. And we're going to type state, and actually I'm going to use lighting.clock time because time of day is a string, state into 0 or 12. So that needs to be the other way around, actually. And so what this means is it is a a one-line conditional statement is what it's called. And so the lighting service clock time is equal to state and 12 or 0. Now what this line here means, this little segment here, means that if state is true, then it's equal to 12. And if state is false, it's equal to 0. It's just an if statement, one variable on one line for two values that need to be assigned in different situations. But state is, of course, true or false, and 12 or 0. The int 12 here means that if state is true, then it will be 12, which is noon. And if state is false, the or 0 will be selected, which means it's the dip of midnight. And so if we hit play and we click the button, we see that it's now night. And if we hit play, we see that it's now night. And there's no errors or anything, because if there were, this code simply wouldn't work. But this is a one-line conditional statement that just simply says, hey, if it's day, then we set it at the afternoon. If it's night, we set it at midnight. It's very simple and very straightforward. So now we have our two settings here, and feel free to comment recommendations for more, and I may go through them in the future in a video on simply expanding our settings menu. But as of right now, we playtest the game, and we see that the settings menu comes up first, and we don't really want that. We want it so that I don't have to hit the X to get back to the menu to be able to hit play. We want it so that I can just see this background menu without seeing the settings frame. And to do that, we simply go down here to visible and tick that box to make visible false. But as you see here, when we press the settings button, it makes the settings frame visible. And when we press the X button over here in the settings frame, it makes the settings frame invisible. And so if we hit play now, then you can see that we have our play, settings, and credits buttons, and our credits button still doesn't do anything, but our settings button, we can go into, change the settings a bit, hit the X, and then hit play, and it saves all of our settings accordingly. We don't have any shadows, but it's also nighttime, which is exactly what we set it to in the game settings. But if, again, I go over to the server and go to view and turn off UI visibility, we can see that it's actually day, and we do have shadows, because all of these changes take place on the client so that they are all per player. And if we go back over to home and switch to the client, we see that it's night and there's no shadows, because it's all per player on the client. And so now that you have your settings button done, you're ready to begin work on your credits button and expanding upon your settings button, and maybe making a more advanced menu background than just this solid color. And we'll get to that in future videos.